Next presentation is from Ian from Barry-Maris. Thank you.
Thank you. So, better nutrition is the foundation for a better salmon farming industry in Norway and a better aquaculture industry in the rest of the world. Now, why am I so confident in making such a bold statement? Well, my name's Ian, and I've spent the last 6 years of my career studying in detail the beneficial effects of omega-3, EPA, and DHA on the productivity of aquaculture. So today, I'm going to share with you the findings from those 6 years through a collaborative project that we've worked together with Barry-Maris, and we are producers of EPA and DHA omega-3 from natural marine algae. From Manolin, another collaborator in this project, they are specialists in big data gathering, analysis, big data intelligence company. And then thirdly, Sustel, which is an innovation from DSM Firmenich, and this is a platform for environmental footprinting in animal nutrition, and they have models for salmon and for shrimp as well. So we've used the model for salmon in this study. So that's what I'm going to focus on in the next 5 to 10 minutes. I need the clicker to move on. So we need more food from the sea, and investing in feed is a great way to deliver that outcome, because when you invest in better nutrition, you get better fish health, you get better fish farm productivity through having healthier fish, you get better quality food for consumers, because at the end of the day, that's why we're in this industry, is to produce food. We need to do that with less environmental impact, and fish farming is a business, so we need to secure better financial returns at the same time. But one of the big challenges that we face is the cost of mortality in the industry. And here in Norway, the cost of mortality is estimated around $1 billion, and that's purely a function of the number of lost fish every year, the average weight of those fish when they die, and the market value that you lose when you lose those fish. So the good news is that together, we're able to do something about this through better nutrition. And the scientific case for better omega nutrition in particular is extremely strong. There is very strong documentation published in peer-reviewed literature and available from all of the companies that work in this space. So, for example, when you look at the growth response from increasing the omega-3 level in diets, you can see very clearly from the study on the left, published in a paper by Brett Glencross, where we know very well how much omega-3 you need in the diets in order to achieve optimal growth. But the problem that we face is that when we move these animals into commercial farming conditions, they're faced with a whole range of different challenges, disease challenges, environmental challenges, they're handled, they're treated for sea lice, all of these things happen. So what we've done is translated that growth data into a set of guidelines, commercial guidelines, which allow for the challenges that fish are facing under commercial conditions. And what we see more recently as well, here a slide from Bente Reuter presentation she made at IFO, is that some farmers now are increasing the levels much higher in the diets, up to 13% in some cases, because they see the benefits of that in commercial salmon farming conditions. But what we set out to do in the collaborative study is to quantify this. How do we know that the science translates to commercial conditions? How do we know that we're going to get a return on that investment in better nutrition? And after a couple of failed attempts at trying to prove this point on single commercial salmon farms, I'll spare you the details of that, we ended up forming a partnership with Manolin to say to these guys, look, you are experts in gathering commercial data. You have access to data for many billions of fish that have been produced. Can you do something with that data? Can you query that data set, map it to the feeds that those fish were given, and explore whether or not there is a benefit in terms of performance and quality through giving the fish better nutrition? So in this first study that we published in 2023, Manolin looked at data from about 250 million fish, and they were able to see benefits in terms of when the fish were given higher levels of EPA and DHA, they had higher growth, they had better feed conversion, they had a higher percentage superior. And we published this work in Frontiers of Marine Science and presented it here at this conference 2 years ago. You can follow the QR code there to learn more about that study. But what I want to focus on for the rest of this presentation is what's new. Because one of the questions that we got a lot when we published that first study is, how can you be sure that the benefits you saw were due to different levels of dietary EPA and DHA? How do you know that you're adjusting for the confounding factors? So we sat down with Manolin and said, let's do it again. We may be crazy, because sometimes when you do a trial and you get great results, you want to stop there. But we carried on and we said, let's do it again. Let's expand the data pool. Let's look at more fish. Let's try to refine that feed data and adjust for the confounding factors. And thirdly, let's try to extend the study downstream. So instead of stopping at the farms, let's stop at the processors and learn more about the quality of the fish. So that's what we set out to do. And Manolin made two fundamental changes to their methodology for this study. Tony Chen is going to talk more about these methodological changes in a focus session tomorrow afternoon. But simply put, the challenge is that on a farm site, you've got a lot of different populations of fish facing different conditions. So what they did is they developed this population tracing algorithm in order to go through the big data sets and identify fish that had been produced under similar conditions, so that you reduce some of the noise in the data set. And this is particularly a challenge on farm sites where there's some mixing or sorting or grading of the fish. So this population tracing algorithm adjusts for that. So then you have some populations of fish that are relatively comparable, but of course, each of those populations of fish are grown under different conditions as well. You might have different genetics or different temperatures. You might have a storm event. These kind of things happen as well. So what they did then is they applied some advanced statistics, IPWRA, and I'm not even going to attempt to tell you what that acronym stands for, but Tony will tomorrow. And this is a methodology that is used in medical science when you can't do controlled trials with people in the same way as you can with animals. So this approach is used to adjust for that, and it gives us a much more accurate outcome from the study, adjusting for those confounding factors. So in short, these methodological changes make our findings more accurate and therefore more reliable. And the outcomes from that study were astonishing, to be honest with you. We were just blown away by what we found. For the first time, now that we had increased the population of fish under study to almost 500 million fish, covering 9 production zones in Norway and over 10 years of production, so this is a very, very robust data set, we could see a statistically lower mortality, 8% lower mortality for the fish that were fed on higher EPA and DHA levels. We could see a 13% reduction in feed conversion ratio accordingly, and we saw a 2% improvement in the superior harvest percentage of those fish. So really incredible results there. And adding to that, the additional benefit is that you get much more predictability in the results from the commercial farming operation. So you can be sure that if you improve the dietary, the quality of the diets, you give better nutrition, you can be sure that that is going to translate to better performance statistics on your farm. You can follow the QR code here to read a bit more about this study. We're going to publish the work as well. And also, a really nice tip is to listen to Tony Chen's Fish and Bits podcast. I don't know, some of you might already be subscribers, but he did a great podcast talking about the methodological changes that they made in order to help us to solve this problem. But it didn't stop there. When we looked at the quality data, this was actually quite a challenging part of the study, because when we approached processors to try to start gathering data, they started giving us a lot of spreadsheets, Excel spreadsheets with data in different formats, and they were also all measuring different things. So it was very difficult to try to get some comparable data, but we managed to get enough to say that in the data that we studied, we saw a 7% reduction in melanin spots for fish fed higher dietary levels of EPA and DHA, and 40% lower blood spots too. And again, more predictable results for those that are fed with better nutrition. So I think where we've got to now, having done 2 big data studies and commercial farm trials as well, we've got a pretty good feel for the productivity benefits that you get if you improve the quality of the nutrition. So we then moved the project forward to say, okay, well, what about the environmental impacts of that better productivity? And what about the financial return on investment? So I'll cover that next. What we saw when we used the SUSTEL tool to model the feeds to produce the salmon, so this tool takes us right the way up to a harvested 5 kilogram salmon. When you use algae oil to increase the omega-3 level in the diet from 6 to 10% of total fatty acids, you do get an increase in the feed carbon footprint of a couple of percent. That's because you have to change the oil mix in order to accommodate the algae oil to do that. So we saw that 2.2% increase in the feed footprint. If you assume that feed is going to perform in exactly the same way, then you would see a 1.2% increase in the carbon footprint of the salmon at the end of the production cycle. But what's interesting here is that when you factor in the productivity benefits, and so you see these on the different axes of the chart. On the top, you see the range of improvement in mortality from 1 to 8%, and on the side there, the range of improvement in EFCR from 1 to 13%. When you factor in those productivity benefits, you actually end up with a 17% lower carbon footprint in the salmon that are produced at the end of the cycle, which is a substantial reduction. And we all know the benefit of reducing carbon footprint. But you may say, okay, yeah, but what if you don't get those benefits? What if you don't get those productivity benefits? Well, even if you get 1% improvement in mortality and 1% improvement in FCR, you still get a 2% reduction in the carbon footprint of the salmon at the end of the production cycle. So it's a good bet in terms of carbon footprint and in terms of marine footprint too. Obviously, if you're being more efficient in your use of resources as a result of this, and you have a baseline FFDR oil, which is the measure of marine footprint of 1.3, because you have a more efficient production, you have a lower EFCR, you therefore get a 15% lower marine footprint as well. So better productivity, lower environmental footprint. What about the business case? Because at the end of the day, salmon farming is a business, and we know very well that if the numbers don't add up, it's very difficult to sell better nutrition into these fish farmers. So what we've done here is we've looked at the range of different unit costs of EPA and DHA. And this is a challenge because fish oil supply is very variable, very volatile, and with that, the price of EPA and DHA is extremely volatile too. It ranges from $40 per percent per ton to $240. So we've modeled across that range of different scenarios, and we see that if you have a scenario where the unit cost of EPA and DHA is very low, as it is now, there's a surplus of fish oil available, the farmers get a 9x return on investment in better nutrition. 9x return on investment. It's a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you do it in the market as it is today? Everybody should be increasing the quality of their diets at the moment. If you go to a scenario like we saw in the last El Nino, where the unit cost is 240, you still get a 1x return on investment, so you still make your money back. It makes sense to do it. But it makes sense even more to do it with algae oil, because you can see here where algae oil sits at around about, well, without giving numbers away, but in the middle of the range of unit costs of EPA and DHA, you can be sure that you're going to get a 3 to 4% return on investment by using algae oil to ensure that you have better nutrition. So, better productivity, lower environmental footprint, and a clear return on investment. Those benefits are extremely compelling for farmers. Across the range, you can see them there, and with that 3x return on investment, I think everybody should be taking steps to improve the quality of the diets, because better nutrition very clearly pays off. We are going to say more about this on our stand, E427, tomorrow afternoon, and we also have some refreshments if anybody wants to call by today to talk more about these results. Thank you for listening.